Well, welcome. My name is RJ Kelly. I'm founder and chief visionary officer of Wealth Legacy Family of Companies, and we've got clients in 19 states, but we are right here in the enviable city of San Diego, California. And I'm here with a very wonderful friend, Pete Wilkinson, who is my go-to guy on all things PEO. And Pete, I've got to say, again, this goes back in time, probably 30 years ago when I first got exposed to PEOs. I didn't know what the heck they were. And so I've gained some degree of knowledge over time, but you have helped me so much in understanding what a wonderful tool a PEO is, even though still it's probably one of the best kept secrets out there.
It is. At the start, none of us could spell PEO, let alone know what it was. So, it's been around now a while, so things have changed, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I'm delighted that you would make the time to be with us today. And again, one of the goals with Wealth Legacy Group is we're constantly looking for subject matter experts that we can bring into our clients, but also post on our website so that folks, so whether you're here with us live or whether you are joining in to listen in, or whether you found us on the website and you're just wanting to hear more about PEOs, welcome. So we're going to keep this moving quickly. And I'm looking at Joseph Knight. I love the picture there. Good stuff. So let me pull up a presentation for us here and let's get started. So we're going to be talking about, I'm going to hide some things on my screen. We're going to be talking about managing complex growth, and especially some of the HR and employee benefit issues that are facing our business owner clients today, and what are some best practices for being able to come up with some good solutions to those issues. So let's see if I can get my mouse to work here. Just real quick flyby about me. I've been in practice over 35 years. The Wealth Legacy Family of Companies is primarily focused on privately held pre-liquidity business owners and also successful families that have had liquidity events. We created a tool called the Critical Actions Roadmap, which addresses a number of different the facilities of a person's planning, their wills, their trusts, their insurance, their investments, their income needs, their taxes, and so forth. And so using that, we can facilitate business succession and those exits when they come along. Also, we do a significant amount of assets and management, but with using some very proprietary and clever designs to put a stop loss in. Because again, this market today is volatile, and it's going to be more so as we go ahead. So we need to have something that protects the principal. And so we use a platform using select Vanguard funds, but with a built-in stop loss so that we can protect that principal. It's a very unique concept, and we're finding a great deal of receptivity to it from clients. And then also we help them in terms of the income. How can we reduce the taxes? Oftentimes you can make more money by paying less tax than you can by making more money. So what's that about? Also, how do we ameliorate? How do we reduce risks and protect assets? And then most importantly, how do we bring clarity? How do we bring clarity to that business owner in terms of what their plans are? How do we bring clarity within the family and succession and assets? And so what's how that look like? So that's a little bit about us in terms of Wealth Legacy Group, our email, contact information. And now for my friend Pete. As I mentioned, Pete, you've been doing this for more than a couple of years. Your beard was dark when I first.
Right, we started on the stone tablets and so forth back then, and but yeah, I'll run through this quickly. Today is not really about me, but it's important to know who's jabbering at you, I think. So, I've been I'm in San Diego, California too, and I've been in this market 35 plus years. I won't put the real number, but that's close enough. And I spent a long time in the payroll industry. So that was my original background with ADP, kind of the stalwart there. But eventually, about 18 years ago, I got into this PEO, professional employer organization business. And so I spent 10 plus years with three of the top national PEOs, the big box PEOs that you know about probably by name and probably call on you if you're a prospect for them. And broke away about 8 years to do what I do now. I've always been focused really only on small and mid-sized companies throughout my career. I think they're the backbone of the American economy. Yeah. They're the most interesting businesses out there in terms of they're curing cancer and doing everything else. So I love it. And so that's where my career has been. I'm not a San Diego native, a couple hours away, but I came down here to go to college and I never left. I love San Diego and its business community. So that's a bit about my background. Why my company started is something that RJ said already, just sort of the confusion around the PEO itself. And we'll talk some more about that and kind of making sense of it. But after about 10 years in the industry, I kind of saw eyes starting to roll and things starting to be confusing. And I felt like the CEOs and trusted advisors needed a helping hand on that. So that's how my business started. Thanks, RJ.
And as you know, I'm your raving fan. I am so glad that I know you and can bring you in as our subject matter expert to talk about all things, not just PEO, but even bigger picture than that, because you are an expert in so many different aspects of HR and growth issues. So today, for those of you who joined us, and I also have a number of folks that have emailed us questions. They're HR people, and they said, RJ, we can't make the event today, but I've got some questions for Pete. So stay tuned, Pete. I've got a bunch of them to shoot at you at the end here.
Good.
Some great questions, but we'll hopefully tackle some of them along the way. But what are business owners facing today? Both Pete and I have been in practice over 35 years. I've never seen anything like this. It's unprecedented in terms of the challenges for finding quality employees and then keeping them. How do you compete today? And then how can PEOs specifically attract, reward, retain, help a business owner attract, reward, and retain those quality employees when you do find them? And last of all, what's it cost? The nothing's for nothing. So what's it cost to bring a PEO in as one of your important team members overall? So, Pete, let's just talk about this a little bit. What are some of the challenges that business owners today are seeing? Certainly, we know there's over 10 million jobs in the US economy right now that nobody's showing up for.
Yep.
So, what are you hearing from your business clients?
Well, it is tough. I'm in the small business segment, primarily companies from 10 employees to 100, if I just use a rough number. So competitive. Here we are in San Diego County. It's like that in any metropolitan area. I'm certain it's more intense maybe in other areas, but certainly intense enough here. And what I'm finding is it's a challenge to differentiate yourself from the next one, or particularly hard to compete against the big boys, quote unquote, in your industry for top talent. So I don't quite have the weapons. How can I get these people in? How do I look different? How can I attract them to my small business environment, a ground floor opportunity to grow with the company when I'm competing against, Qualcomm or someone like that for the employees? How can I do it? So I hear a lot about that. Not only getting employees, but keeping good ones, because certainly if you have great employees, your competitors are calling on them every day to try to steal them away. So it's a two-sided coin, same question really. How do I get them? How do I keep them? And that's what I've been hearing a lot of. It's hard to differentiate yourself and make you look the way you'd like to look, I guess, the most attractive you possibly could be.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, you're talking about Qualcomm and some of the engineers. That's not a $15 an hour kind of employee, but is compensation, whether it's the $15 an hour issue or whether it's the $100 an hour or $100,000 a year or whatever, is compensation truly the only issue that employees are looking for, or is there something else? Is there something else at play behind that as well?
I think there is. I think kind of there always is, but look, we all need to make a paycheck. So that's going to be number one there on the list, or high on the list. But, you're not going to stay at a job just for pay, so I don't think that's the way to attract that type of employee either. So it's all about, your culture and that kind of thing. And PEOs are great to mix in with your culture. They're not looking to change it. They're looking to enhance it. So compensation is not the issue. I think ideally the employee would love to find a place to work where they could grow with the company, where the compensation is excellent, but it's a fun environment. They can show off their talents. They're not just one in a group of hundreds. They're making a difference. So I think those things are always true. Compensation is an issue, and that's why PEOs, with their ability to help a small business look, feel, and have the resources of a larger business, can really help small companies in this particular area.
What's that saying? The best thing we can do for the poor is not be one of them. So compensation clearly is an issue for us to start with. But we were chatting with John DiBenedetto before we got started here, Pete and I, and And John, what you were mentioning about culture, that's so important as well. So it's about a culture of caring for employees. In addition, starting point, yeah, compensation is important, but it's also that culture of that fact that the employer, the business owner, is looking out for the employees and wanting to bring the right culture and fit, as well as the compensation.
RJ, I think that last point is huge, and you can go right on to this, but that point is huge because those business owners that sort of get the PEO idea and they seem to get it quickly are those that realize they can leverage the PEO to best take care of their employees. When I talk to an employer, to a CEO or trusted advisor, that's something that I'm listening for is, do you truly care about the employees, or are they just an expense that you kind of would rather do without? It's usually somewhere in between. But those business owners that really truly care and are willing to put their money where the mouth is, that's a huge part of how a PEO can work, and a really good candidate to look at one.
Yeah, great fit, isn't it? So how do you go about it? I mean, what's the starting point? PEO
Yeah.
possibilities, or PEO Pete, when you come in the door,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah, and we'll skim through this stuff, RJ, because the nuts and bolts today are about educating about the PEO. But again, I found that after 10 years in the industry, particularly if companies were thinking of going with a PEO and they wanted to look at a PEO, like anything else, if you're getting a roof or if you're getting a workers' comp quote or this or that, you may want to get 2 or 3. And since the PEO, as you'll learn, encompasses a lot of things, it's a lot to really get 2 or 3 PEOs interviewed.
Sure.
And that kind of thing. So I just found that CEOs ended up making decisions for PEOs based on the wrong factors, or just kind of throwing a dart at the dartboard at the end of the day. And so I'd see companies leave the PEO after a year or so, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? That shouldn't happen. The relationship should last for years. So I just found that employers are facing a real challenge in understanding the PEO, but even bigger with that, it's just facing, as we just talked about, challenges in HR. If I can say, where does a PEO fit? And we'll go a lot more into this. It's a logical thing. It's companies that are big enough where they have HR stuff going on in their business and they need to protect it. They've grown out of that stage where it's friends and family. Now we've got some people on board that we didn't know before. And so we know that we need to cover our bases with HR, but we're not big enough to get a full-time person. That's where the PEO comes in. Just like a part-time CFO, part-time IT person, whatever it might be, you're big enough that you need your business protected and you want great benefits for your employees and all the stuff that comes with a PEO, but you're not big enough to get a full-time HR, maybe even a part-time HR person, get a lot more bang for the buck with a PEO. And so I formed the business to simply help employers understand it. It says no fee right there. And I must explain that before we go on. Everybody's wondering. We all need to get paid, and I do get paid. But you as the client or RJ or the trusted advisor never pays me. You're not on the clock with me. I'm willing to sit down and talk about the PEO, educate folks, help you determine if you're truly a fit for the PEO or not. And one of the biggest things I do is disqualify people from the PEO. Not everyone is a fit. If so, everybody would be using it, right? But it's a niche fit. And when it does fit, it fits very well. But you don't want to go into that relationship when it doesn't fit. So that's the thing. That's why I started it. I get paid by the PEOs. I formed relationships with a bunch of PEOs, plenty of them, big ones, medium-sized ones, all accredited, all top-notch PEOs. But I have equal agreements with all of them. So I can help you, I can help your client understand the PEO, understand the particular quotes coming in from PEOs. I facilitate all that, but you're never on the clock with me. If and when a company that I work with and help selects a PEO, whatever PEO it is, and it's your decision always, that PEO is happy to pay me for finding something for them. If we don't end up going with a PEO, that's fine. That's perfectly great. But it's important to know it's a no fee service, no matter how many times we meet, talk, or have meetings. So it comes from my strong feeling about small business owners. You need the help. And so I formed it to work that way. And that's what I do.
Well, recently we brought you in on a case, and I think it's still going on, but where they have employees in different states, and they had several of their employees that were exercising stock options. Mm-hmm. So it was some very unique tax matters. I think it was in like Massachusetts or one of those other states. that had, or North Carolina or wherever, but that had some very unique tax issues. And the payroll service that they were using was clueless. They could not help them. And
Right.
so that's why I called you up and said, hey, Pete, I got a case I don't know what to do with, but these are good people and they need some help. And so you were able to kind of come in and really peel back the onion there and have a very substantive conversation to help.
Yeah, we've had several clients that you sent my way and we helped them sort it out and get them
Sorry
going.
about not sending you easy ones. I don't send you easy ones. I know that. I'm apologizing right now.
It's okay.
Okay. Well, let's talk about really PEOs and they've been around long enough, even though there's still a lot of people who don't know what they are,
Sure.
that have had enormous success. So unpack this for us a little bit. This was a powerful slide.
It is. And I want to point out the bottom information there, napeo.org. That's the National Association of PEOs. It's the trade association for the PEO industry. You want to look at that site. There's a lot of good information about PEOs, question answers. You can look up a PEO. You can do all kinds of stuff there. So that's just something to file away. But they do studies all the time. They hire organizations to do studies. One of the recent ones, and it's been consistent through all the years I've been around the industry, and the PEO industry has been around about 35 years. This is a fact. Companies that are with a PEO compared to other businesses grow 7 to 9% faster. They have 23 to 32% lower employee turnover, and they're 50% less likely to go out of business. And in that last slide is the most important one. People talk about they know what they don't know. In this case, it's they don't know what they don't know. That's what always gets them. And that's where PEOs can protect you.
Well, and the fact is, as we see in this slide, there's over 700 active PEOs in the US. That's stunning. How do you even possibly know where to go without having somebody like you as the guidepost to be able to direct traffic once you find out what the issues are?
Right. And what happens is, you only end up hearing if again, you're in that 20 employee, 30, 40, 60 employee, you're going to hear from PEOs, but you're probably only going to hear from some of the top tier ones that have, that high budget, the Insperities, Trinets, Paychecks, these kind of larger PEOs. But there are so many that are highly reputable, that are smaller than that, but still national, still certified, all of that. And the point is, they're all different. They all provide similar services, but from different vendors, different way. They're after a different market. They don't want everybody, all that kind of thing. So you're right, RJ. It's very confusing. And that's kind of why my business was born.
Now, I know that Netflix, for example, used PEO until they got to over 1,500 employees. Now, I doubt that all 1,500 employees were through the PEO, but one of the beauties of using a PEO is that you can selectively use the PEO for just part of the employee base. It doesn't have to be for the entirety. Although another company I spoke for, they happen to be a franchise company, and they asked me to come back to talk to all their franchisees and how to do good planning. And I was surprised they had 50 employees and all 50 of them were on a PEO. And that was the way this particular franchisor handled business. He says, yep, we like PEOs. It's a great thing for us.
It is. Yeah, we'll skim through this. Basically, if you're interested in a PEO, or if you're already with a PEO, I'll throw in that you should benchmark that PEO every couple of years, because there are great options out there. And you just want to make sure you're getting the most for your money. Check it out every couple of years. But my process is simple. If there's someone that's interested in knowing about the PEO, they think they might be a candidate, we meet, we talk, we can do Zoom, the phone, I can come out to your office, no cost to you. We'll talk about it. I'll understand your vision, the unique vision that you have versus everyone else. And by the end of that meeting, we'll be able to determine really if your company could leverage the services of a PEO truly or not. It's not worth us going down the road if it doesn't look like a good fit, or you're in it for different reasons. And a lot of times I find it's just components of things. Hey, we just need better benefits, or we just need better this or better HR. We've already got the other stuff locked up. But whatever it is, we'll decide by the end of that first meeting if it makes sense to move forward at all with the PEO process. You don't want to get bogged down in that if you don't need to. And that's exactly what we'll do. And that's the main thing. Do you truly fit the profile? Look, if a PEO salesperson calls on you, they're going to tell you that you do belong, that you do fit, and let's make an appointment and all of that stuff. I'm not going to necessarily give you that line. And I'll tell you why you don't fit or why you might fit in the future. And if it is a good fit, we agree on that, then I spearhead the whole process. You don't have to contact 2 or 3 PEOs and give them everything they're asking for and all the stuff they want. It all goes through me. I'm the conduit of information. I already know the PEOs that will fit you in my mind. And I have great colleagues at them, the top PEO professionals. You're not getting, sort of the next sales rep in the lead rotation to work with you. It's somebody very reputable, and I won't waste your time by sending you PEOs that don't specialize in your business or that wouldn't fit you very, very well. So I'll spearhead all of those meetings. I'll be at all of those meetings, all the way up through getting a proposal from multiple PEOs. I'll go over those. I'll make sure you understand them. The decision will be yours, but I stay with you even after you become a PEO client, because at the renewal, I can be very, very helpful to help keep the costs where they need to be for you. So that's getting ahead of it.
So much time. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You have saved so much time for our clients and for me to have that person in there like you to be able to spearhead.
Yep.
So again, I know there are some people that don't know what the heck a PEO is. They're where I was not that long ago, I guess maybe 20 years ago, but anyway, still. And so what is a PEO, first of all? And then secondly, how's it different from employee leasing or some of the other services that are out there, the ADPs and the paychecks and so forth? And then what's the kind of landscape today, particularly coming in this COVID crisis and coming out of the COVID issues?
Great question. And that's a good place to start. The basics of a PEO. A PEO is a company like a TriNet or an Insperity, if you've ever heard of them. Insperity has a lot of commercials on the air right now. You'll hear commercials for Insperity. They're talking about a PEO. That's what they're talking about. The basics of a PEO, generally speaking, it's an HR department for small business, if you want to look at it that way. Every PEO has to do one thing for you, and that is they have to do your payroll. That's non-negotiable. So if you're using Paychecks or ADP or QuickBooks or something, you do need to bring that to the PEO. That's the engine that sort of drives everything. But even here, they go further than your typical payroll service. Yes, they're going to handle your federal and state taxes. And again, any of the 50 states. The PEOs I work with are in all 50 states. So if you're trying to expand to another state, you can be their next payroll when you're with a PEO. So you're going to get payroll. They're going to file all your quarterly taxes, annual taxes, W-2s. They're also going to handle your unemployment claims. And the reason they're able to do that for you is every PEO enters into an agreement with a client, and it's a shared liability agreement. It's very well defined. Here's how it differs from staff leasing. And that's the old sort of awkward concept that it grew out of. You used to have to, if you wanted to use a staff leasing company, you had to terminate your employees. This leasing company hired them and then leased them back to you. Can you imagine how the employees felt? Who wants me? It was an awkward thing. And so a lot of there's still some of that out there today, I guess I would say, where people think it's like that, or the PEO is very controlling, and it's not. The PEO is an administrative employer. They're willing to share in some of the HR liability and so forth. And I should say here that not everybody can get into a PEO. There is underwriting that goes on in both benefits and workers' comp, and they'll ask you some HR related kind of questions, can't get too detailed. But PEOs know who they want. Each one has a different flavor of who they want. And they will do your payroll, all the associated taxes. They will also handle your employee benefits. And this is either 1A or 1B, always in terms of why companies are looking at a PEO, at least initially. PEOs, take one, Insperity, for example. They have roughly 150,000 worksite employees in their employee buying pool. In other words, their client companies, maybe they have 5,000 clients or what have you. The base of employees in that buying pool that Insperity has as a client base enables them to go out and get benefits from United Healthcare and Kaiser and some other vendors at rates that we could never dream of at 20 employees. You know that battle if you're trying to fight it, trying to get benefits and trying to keep rates low at renewal, very difficult. So medical benefits is huge. And we talked about how to attract and retain employees. This is a big one. We can talk more about that. HR is the third thing, and it's always 1A or 1B. And I say, for a long-lasting PEO relationship, there has to be an element of HR to it. Again, the company's grown large enough where they have HR stuff and HR needs going on, funky stuff going on in the business, and they know that. They know that they need some things tightened up. That's what a PEO is huge for, because if a PEO brings you in, you get an HR professional as part of your PEO team, that PHR, SPHR certified person that you'd go pay $100K for or more if you wanted to hire them, you just get with your PEO team. And so you can call them 100 times a day, and they're always going to give you leading edge HR advice, because in short, if you're out of compliance when you're a PEO client, so is the PEO. So you can see their due diligence in bringing clients aboard. They don't want clients that are going to put them in a bad position. But if you happen to get in a bad position, the PEO is there to help you out of it, because the PEO, the Insperity with 5,000 clients, is filing all of them under Insperity's federal ID number. That's the risk they're willing to take. So you get the HR, you get workers' comp coverage, and that's the main business insurance you get from PEOs is workers' comp.
Let me just drop a point in there, because again, a lot of employers aren't thinking about this, but one of the differences is if somebody's getting sued or somebody's, we had a situation where an employer knew that one of his employees was fraudulently filing a workers' comp claim, because some of the other employees told this employer, yeah, we see John down playing volleyball. But for them, because they had a PEO, then the PEO was doing battle. They were showing up in court. They're going, nope, we've got people videoed you on the court. And so the workers' comp claim was denied. Yep. And the employer was so happy that they'd made the change to a PEO, because they said, we used to be with, and I won't say the name, but, and we had other workers' comp issues, and they weren't anywhere. They didn't care because their names weren't on this. But what I like now about the PEO is they're in the battle with us.
They're in the battle with you. And God forbid you have an injury, it routes all through the PEO's, arm, and they handle it and so forth. And of course, because of their size, they can keep workers' comp rates down. The other thing they'll do for you is a 401k if you're trying to get one going or you have one going. This is a great question right here, RJ. How can you control costs with a PEO? Certainly a PEO is not free. And we'll talk in a minute about how they charge you. They're either going to charge you a flat dollar rate per person per month or on a percentage basis. And you have to watch out for that. But how do they help you control costs? Well, they're going to fix the cost of employment for you going forward 12 months at a time. There's nowhere else where you can find that. It's a very unique situation. Amazing. Right now, here you have payroll with this company, workers' comp over here, benefits over here, it's all a bunch of vendors, a bunch of relationships, different renewal dates. You don't have much control over it because you're small. The PEO, let's say you pay your employees twice a month, which is the most common here in California. You're used to using ADP or some sort of payroll service, and the taxes, you deposit them every payroll. A PEO is going to do that. They're going to run your payroll, and they're going to debit your account every payroll for not only the payroll taxes, though, but also just that payroll's worth of workers' comp, just that payroll's worth of the employer portion of benefits, just that payroll's worth of the fee that the PEO charges. Mm-hmm. And just obviously just that section of just that chunk of employer taxes. So you're keeping up to date on everything in bite-sized pieces with a PEO. You're never paying anything in arrears, never anything in advance, going forward, because the PEO's already told you, here's what our fee is going to be for the next 12 months. Here's what your benefit costs are going to be for the next 12 months. And here's what your workers' comp costs are going to be for the next 12 months. You already know that going forward. You can unhook a lot of those relationships. Again, the only business insurance, of note is the workers' comp insurance. And then there's also a piece that covers you for wrongful terminations and that kind of thing. Those insurances come with the PEO. But obviously, knowing what your costs will be going forward, and if it's a flat dollar amount per person per month that the PEO is charging, which is what I always recommend to my clients, then if I grow by 10 employees, I'm growing by this amount, because that's what I pay for the PEO for all the stuff they do. So it's a very unique model in terms of taking the peaks and valleys out of your cost model for employment. There's no longer a workers' comp audit, for example. There's not that balloon payment looming, because you're keeping up on it in bite-sized pieces. So that's probably one of the downsides of using a PEO, if you want to call it that, is you've got to do that, or they won't let you stay a client very long.
Yeah, you got to follow the rules. Gee, what a concept.
Yep.
Years ago, a wonderful friend by the name of Tim Dewan told me kind of some dark secrets, if you will, about how banks measure the worth of a banking client. And they look at how much money they're going to make off of them for their deposits and this and that. And then look at what are the services that we're having to pay for that client. And that can be measured. And for some of the clients that are larger, say maybe have $1 million of float, for those of you that are listening to this webinar today, or wherever you're getting this, your favorite podcast channel, understand this, that if you're at, say, $1 million or more of float, there's a really good chance that you should sit down with your banker, find out how much profit you are making to them and what expenses you are creating for them. And it's probably going to be a positive number in your favor. And so you can take that positive number and actually use it to reimburse yourself for some of the PEO expenses.
Yep.
Now, the PEO does have to break it out. I mean, it has to be something that is broken out that you can see and not just sort of an amorphic, here's the total number. But that's another little tip that you can not only get much more cost-effective services using your PEO and through Pete, but at the same time, maybe your bank can help you out on some of those fees as well. So
hey, that's good stuff, RJ. And there's one other point here that's really important, and that is, PEOs are not immune to cost increases from their benefit providers and workers' comp and such. But you can imagine some of the largest PEOs have 300,000, 400,000 worksite employees in their buying pool. Their cost increases for benefits because they know who their pool is. They know who they're bringing in. They know what it looks like. Their increases are always going to be less than yours will be. That's a safe statement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can look that up historically. PEOs are going to increase in single digits, almost always.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last single digit increase that you had in your small business? It's hard. So that's the other way they help you control costs. Yes, PEOs are probably going to cost you a little, but you're at that crossroads anyway, where you're looking at, improving your business and sort of investing in HR anyway. So you're always going to save. And over time, the benefit costs and workers' comp costs, same thing. They'll increase at a lower rate over time with a PEO than they would if you were not with a PEO. And so that's how you control costs over time. The risks here of going with a smaller PEO versus the ones we typically hear about, again, you're going to get called on by TriNet, by Insperity, by BBSI if you're a blue collar company or what have you. But take this example. 12 years ago, when I started with TriNet, they had 30,000 worksite employees in their pool. They were basically a California PEO. They're still headquartered in California, kind of grew up serving the .com businesses, but they were only about 30,000 employees. Then they started making acquisitions and, marketing and doing this. Today, you turn around and they're more than 10 times that size. Mm-hmm. So my point being, TriNet was a great company in 2009, still is fine where they fit. But the point is, I have relationships with many, many PEOs that are of a similar size to that one, where TriNet was back then. And there's not great risk as long as they're certified in the proper way. You can sort of look them up and kind of verify certain things that I'll help you with in terms of due diligence.
Designation, isn't there? There's something you're going to talk about in a minute here, but
yeah, we will for sure. So there's a lot of PEOs out there, and I would shy away from any that are quote unquote mom and pop that just aren't correctly certified and can't prove that to you.
Good. That's good to know, because obviously we want to stay with somebody who's going to be around.
Yeah. And this is where the rubber meets the road. I think it's probably easier on this side to start talking about how are they actually similar. And I mentioned that earlier. They have to do your payroll. And a lot of them use the same engine, Prism or something like that, to kind of drive the HR and payroll, behind the scenes. But beyond that, PEOs differ in ways that really matter. And this I think is where I humbly would say my value comes in largely, because they all tend to look alike, really, at a high level. Well, they're going to do my payroll. They're going to do my benefits, my workers' comp, 401k. What's the difference? Well, they all use different vendors for all those different things. Even at a higher level, PEOs know who they want as clients. They don't want everyone. I mean, they'll all take the white collar businesses, for sure, the engineers and that kind of low cost workers' comp stuff. But when you start getting into gray collar and blue collar, they don't all want that. And so if you're talking to a PEO salesperson with a quota, they're going to try their hardest a lot of times to get you in there because, you
Mhm.
know, even if you don't quite exactly fit, you know, I'll make you fit. But they differ in that, in terms of who they're really after. They differ in terms of how they keep their clients around. What's their retention rate with clients? I mean, these are things that we can look
Great
up and talk
question.
about. Very, very important. You know, are they churning their sales force too? I mean, are you getting someone new all the time? Are they treating their own employees well? You know, they use the different vendors for all of these different things, and they you know, so the bottom line is they're really all after different types of clients. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in, is that, you know, hey, you know, I'm a small business, probably every PEO wants me, and let's throw a dart at it and see who comes. So there are so many ways PEOs differ that we could talk about that a long time, but suffice to say, there are substantive ways that PEOs differ that are important to know about. And those are some things that we'll talk about when we get into it more deeply.
Perfect. Well, you explained a little bit about PEOs in terms of how they charge, but why don't we drill into that a little bit more?
Yeah, that's a good one.
How do they get paid?
That's a good one. Let's take an example. That's always the best for me. Let's say we have 30 employees, because that's a great candidate for a PEO. Big enough that you need good HR policies, you need airtight stuff, T's crossed, I's dotted. We need to feel like we can sleep at night because we handled that termination correctly, those kinds of things. But assuming that we're in the PEO relationship, or we're looking at a PEO relationship, a PEO will charge one of two ways: either a flat dollar amount per person per month, or as a percentage of your payroll, each payroll. And so a percentage of payroll is tough because, number one, it varies, right? So the bit I talked about before about predicting your costs going forward, it makes it harder. Now, there are certain industries that a percentage does work for, and it's generally companies with a lower wage base across the board. That's where a percentage of 2 or 3% can work out. Any sort of professional organization probably is going to do better with a flat dollar amount per person per month. So we have 30 employees. We're looking at getting an HR person. You know, we're right at that stage. How about a PEO? I can tell you at 30 employees, a PEO, for all the stuff it does, will probably charge you somewhere around, let's use the number $30,000 a year, just $1,000 an employee a year. Okay, so that's kind of your starting point. What do you get for that? Well, you've got your professional HR person. You just hired them for $30,000 a year. That's a trick. That's a good trick. You've got an HR pro on your team now that you would have paid a whole bunch more. Plus, you got all the payroll stuff, the 401k, all the HR advice, of course. The extra charges are still your employer portion of benefits, your employer portion, you know, the workers' comp. PEO doesn't pay your workers' comp, but they give you good rates. And so a PEO will charge you a flat dollar amount. And at 30 employees, I'd be looking to work the PEO to give me a number of about $1,000 an employee per year. From that number, then you start knocking off stuff that you're already paying for. Oh, we already pay the payroll service. I already have an HR consultant. I already, you know, pay some fees to the sales rep on this and that, and the 401k fees I have every year. You start knocking that stuff off that initial figure, you can get it to be pretty low, particularly if it's you, the business owner, that is spending a lot of time sort of in the business instead of on the business, you know. So your time, how much is that worth? How much of that can you shed? Maybe you have other key employees in the business that are doing stuff that they shouldn't, you know. Let's free them up from that. Let's make them more strategic. That's worth money. Harder to calculate, but we all know it is worth money. But how a PEO charges is a flat dollar amount per person per month, and they will quote you 12 months at a time going forward. So you know that. And then at renewal time, you know, you'll get a chance a month or two in advance of the renewal to look at it with me if we work together. And we'll look at it and we'll make sure it looks in line. Maybe we work it a little bit. But that's how it goes. And then they'll renew it for 12 months more going forward. Now, the relationship is really one-sided in favor of you, the employer, because the PEO will guarantee its rates going forward, but you can leave the PEO relationship at any time with a 30-day written notice. So you're not locked into it. A PEO is not in your face and telling you how to do stuff. The best example I can give is they're like an operating system behind the scenes. helping you run your business. Your employees, their visibility of it's pretty cool for them because they're going to have a web portal now that they can go to. It's co-branded with the PEO and your logo, and they can go in there and look up all their stuff. They can change their own W-4 information. They can change their direct deposit. They can look up their 401k. They can feel empowered to do some things on their own. So they get a technology piece with it too. But that's how PEOs charge. If you're with a PEO now, I'll just throw this last thing in. If you're with a PEO now, I advise you to benchmark them every couple of years. Take a look at it and just see what the fees are. And if you're being charged a percentage of payroll right now, and I'll just say in Sparity, I work with them, I love them, but their billing is as a percentage. And I challenge you to understand it in a friendly way. If you can't come to me and tell me how much you're paying per employee per month, then we should look at that. All right, thanks.
Great point. All right. I'm just chuckling because I've had that experience where I've looked at some breakout charges like, what is this telling us? So
well, we have to demand that the PEO and all the PEOs I work with break out your employer taxes, your benefits portion, your workers' comp, and their fee clearly every single payroll. We want no mysteries. And they'll also work their numbers back into your system, your accounting system very easily through electronic files these days. They'll help feed your GL and so forth very easily these days.
Now, a moment ago, we talked about this term PEO, or we referenced or we alluded to the fact that there are some. What is that exactly, and what's its significance?
That it is significant, and that's something that's just come out in the last few years. It really just means certified PEO. Up to this point, a few years ago, PEOs had generally been a state by state thing, if you will. And the feds came in, as they will, there's a money opportunity in there somewhere, and said, we'll have our own program, and we'll sort of, and there was a bill that came through Congress and everything that basically put the good housekeeping seal on the PEO industry from the Fed side. And so there is a process that PEOs need to go through to become a certified PEO. I'm sure it's not inexpensive either, but doing so gives that PEO more credibility. You can feel better about going with them. They've had to jump through some extra hoops that PEOs that don't have that designation have not. Now, they may be in the queue for getting that designation. So just because they're not a CPEO yet doesn't mean that they're not trying to become one. So we want to pay attention to that. But I probably would try to stay away from a non-CPEO PEO, and that's what I do. We only go with CPEOs.
Super. Yeah. Now, this could take a little bit of time, but we need to keep moving along here. But there are some common misconceptions. One of them being, oh, it's just employee leasing. But what else do you see out there?
Yeah, that is it, and that's where we'll start. I just have misconceptions about it in general because my buddy told me about it, or somebody used it and it didn't go well, or just that kind of thing. And I just invite everybody to find out for themselves. The PEO is just like another business tool. It's neither good nor bad. It's just there, and it's either going to help you or not. So, I mean, that's just the way to approach it. I think the biggest misconception, RJ, is that people think that probably coming from that staff leasing background, the PEO is going to come in and take over my business. Wait a minute, you're going to use you're going to use your federal ID number and not mine? What's up with that? I mean, that kind of thing where it sounds like the PEO is trying to control the business in some way. That couldn't be further from the truth. You and I will review the agreement that each PEO has with you. Because of the IRS designation of what a PEO is and all of that, there has to be certain language in there that looks like, if you read it, man, okay, they have the right to hire and fire employees and blah, blah, blah. In the next paragraph, they return that right to you because they're not on site. They don't want that responsibility. They can't make hiring and firing decisions for you. They can give you advice about it, but that's all. The final decision on whether to hire an employee, terminate an employee, give them a raise, do whatever, it's yours. But the PEO is going to tell you, hey, if you do that, this could happen. We can't stop you from doing that. You got employees jumping off the roof at lunchtime, and we've told you to stop. It's not a good workers' comp thing. But we're not going to come over there and stop those people from jumping off the roof. We might have you exit as a client of ours, but we're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to give you best practices, be on the bleeding edge of all that stuff. So we're way ahead of you just sort of finding out, oh, that tax law changed. I guess I better change my software. They're way ahead of all that stuff.
And
But the
Pete,
biggest
build on
piece
that,
is
because one of the things that in some employers that do run a tight ship, they are very proactive.
Yep.
And one of the misconceptions that I've heard is, gosh, I don't want to join a big pool because there might be people in there that their employees are jumping off the roof during lunchtime, and I don't want to be exposed to those kind of claims. So what would you say to that business employer?
I would say to them, that's where the due diligence comes in. We're going to take a look closely at that PEO and what their track record is, of keeping those rates where they need to be, and those kinds of things, because you're right. I mean, there are so many businesses that do a great job already, and I don't want to imply anything to the contrary. They're doing the best they can, and they're doing a very good job, but they can't know it all. There's just too much. That's all there is to it. There's too much. I mean, you want to be able to run your business, not have to know all the other stuff. The red flags, good question. And this is a question that's always there. But if anything, I would say that it's a more secure industry today than when I started, largely because of the feds putting that CPEO designation, but also because it's 18 years further along. It's an established thing. The only red flags I would see, and I've said it for 18 years, is if the government actually comes in and said, this PEO thing is illegal, or we can't have it anymore, or whatever, or just some really weird onerous regulation. And I can't imagine what that would be. I don't think that is going to happen, because it's really going the other direction. And as long as there are businesses now that are becoming really good with the idea of outsourcing, and HR outsourcing, that sounds right, because I already do it over here with my payroll and all kinds of other stuff. I think as people generally are more used to outsourcing, if anything, it's going to be a growing thing. There's more education out there now. PEOs have been around longer. It's more accepted. I don't see any red flags in the industry overall.
So one question, Pete, and this may have been resolved, but at one time, one of the issues was if somebody came into a PEO and so they no longer had their own individual workers' comp, they were getting the workers' comp mod of the PEO. But then after 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, the business owner decided to exit the PEO for whatever reason. But now they have to get their own workers' comp, but they don't have history. They haven't had their own workers' comp for the last 5 years or something.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's a great question. And that's really come a long way too. That was kind of clunky back in the day. But now PEOs will look at you as a workers' comp risk. They'll factor in that mod rate. And that mod rate no longer goes away. It kind of goes into suspension. And once you exit a PEO relationship, you can actually pick that up again and get back with it. That's come a long way, because it was kind of clunky back in the past. So it's easier to, and that's a good question about how do I get out of a PEO? You give them a written notice. We help you, and that's somewhere else I can help you, is kind of get integrated back into the non-PEO world. Hey, companies outgrow the PEO. A PEO is very happy if they can take you from 20 employees to 100 and you have to say goodbye because they helped you grow that much. That's fantastic for the PEO. So that's a great question, though. That's something that's come a long way.
Well, as we wrap up here, and I do have a few of those questions, so I think we've got a few more minutes, so I'm going to feed in a few more things. But for folks, today we've been talking and looking at what are some of the challenges that business owners face in terms of finding quality. We've talked about a PEO, and Pete's done a brilliant job of really unpacking this and what it looks like, how it gets used. I'm getting a message that my vocal quality, audio quality may be going away. So hopefully you can still hear me. And then last, we talked about the costs and benefits of PEOs and what to do. So Pete, let's just kind of wrap up here. And I'm assuming that you can still hear me clearly enough, and hopefully
I sure can.
Our listeners can as well. So, pardon me, as far as going with, I'm really looking at many of these questions we've already tackled.
I have one of them left that I think will help folks in closing, perhaps. And that question I'm asked a lot is, what business type is an ideal candidate to really leverage the services of a PEO? And that question is best answered by where you are in terms of size and what you have available to you in terms of resources on the HR side. But if you're in that growth phase where now you have a bunch of employees that aren't part of that initial core group, you have risk in the business. And so in that sense, anybody in that general size range is a good candidate for a PEO. Industry-wise, everybody, all PEOs will take the white collar, but believe me, there are PEOs for every industry segment. If you're very blue collar, construction, probably everything but roofing, maybe. I don't think anybody wants that yet. But construction, heavy manufacturing, there's a PEO for you. So industry doesn't matter so much. You'll kind of hear from those PEOs that want you, you're white collar, we want you. But don't rule yourself out, either thinking that you're too small, you're too large, because there are companies with hundreds of employees just based on their HR expertise in-house, whether that model works or not. But it does work for some. So your size, your HR makeup here, and your industry shouldn't matter that much. There should be a PEO for you. And again, if you're already with one, congratulations. I think it's a great idea. If you'd like to benchmark that and talk about how they're doing for you and what other options are available. I like companies to stay with the PEO they're with if it's working for you. So a big fan of that. A good PEO client relationship should last a number of years. On average, it's about 7.5 years across the industry. And today, about 175,000 US small businesses are using a PEO right now as we speak. So it's pretty widespread. There's a lot of your neighbors here in San Diego or wherever you might be that are already leveraging it.
Well, great comments and great content. And thank you, Pete, for really laying out something that is such a great tool. It's just, again, it's that great unknown tool that I do think, from what you've just said a second ago, that we are now starting to see a greater integration into the business community. But there's still obviously a whole lot of room to grow since the preponderance of businesses today have less than 100 employees.
And I think you'll find that statistically, you'll hear that maybe 8% of the industry has been penetrated by the PEO. It's very small.
Very small.
There's a huge segment still remaining.
Well, as you can tell, those of you who found us and have been with us now to the end point today, Pete is a compendium. This is why I rely on him to give us the answers we need for our clients. And so you've got his contact information right there on the screen. I'll speak it out loud for those of you who might be at the beach or doing whatever you're doing, but 858-500-2728. That's 858-500-2728, or Pete at PEOpossibilities.com. PEO Pete, that's how I remember. So Pete at PEOpossibilities.com. Pete, thank you so much, my friend. I really value your skill sets. As you evidenced, you are so easy to work with and really, truly a very, very knowledgeable. So you make me look good every time. Thank you.
Thanks so much, RJ. It was really a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So on behalf of Pete Wilkinson, PEO Pete, Wealth Legacy Group, and we're just grateful for and thankful for you being with us today and or listening in. And with whatever you're doing, know that you can make a difference. Truly today, it's only at the bottom of the ladder that it's the most crowded. The fact is, for those companies that are willing to take the time to be thoughtful in their approach to listening to the needs of the employee, asking questions about what the company can do to help that employee achieve more of their own goals, whether that's inside the business or outside the business. And at the same time, there's usually one or two people that just aren't living up to the standards of the overall group. They're the weakest link. So again, that's where a PEO can also be helpful when you're sitting down and having those kind of tough conversations about, hey, Susie or Johnny just isn't cutting it. They're not fitting into the tribe. How do we approach this in a way that is good for them, but it's also good for us and accomplishes the task of bringing in the right person? So Pete, I know you alluded to that a little bit earlier, but again, that's another resource that's there to call on for the PEOs. So again, on behalf of Pete, on myself, RJ Kelly, Wealth Legacy Group, thanks for being with us. God bless. Watch for the next one. We'll have something in your inbox before too long. And bye for now.
Thanks again, RJ.